You ever see someone so calm it scares you? That's exactly how everyone felt the moment Alyssa wiped the blood off her face and said, "You shouldn't have done that." The first punch of silence hit before she even said a word. That's what happens sometimes, when you walk into a place where nobody looks like you, and everybody's already decided who you are before you open your mouth. It was 7:45 a.m. when Alyssa Coleman stepped off the yellow school bus in Overland Park, Kansas, holding a worn backpack and a folder pressed tightly against her chest. The fall air carried that mix of cold and diesel that lingers around bus stops. Her breath puffed in little white clouds as she glanced up at the big, red brick building of Crestview High School. She didn't look nervous, though. If anything, she looked calm. Maybe too calm. There was a stillness about her, the kind that made people turn their heads. Her dark braids were neatly tied back, her posture straight, her steps deliberate. She didn't fidget, didn't rush, didn't try to blend in. The problem was, in this town, everyone else did. Inside the building, chatter filled the hallways. Lockers slammed, sneakers squeaked, laughter echoed. That sharp teenage kind of laughter that always seems to be at someone's expense. Alyssa found her locker, 214B, right near the science wing. She twisted the lock once, twice, 3 times before it opened. That's when she felt it. Eyes on her. 2 girls stood a few lockers down, whispering. One of them, tall and blonde, leaned close to the other, smirking. "Who's that? New girl?" "Yeah, I heard she's from somewhere near Dallas or something. Figures." Alyssa didn't flinch. She'd heard worse. Back at her old school in Texas, some kids made fun of her for being quiet. She had learned early on that silence could be armor. She slid her notebook in, closed the locker, and turned toward her first class. "Hey, you're new, right?" Alyssa stopped. A boy with curly brown hair and a band shirt smiled at her. "I'm Zach." "You look lost." "I'm good," she replied softly, but her tone carried that calm confidence that made Zach hesitate before nodding. "All right, cool. If you need help finding bio, it's down the hall." She gave a polite half smile. "Thanks." He walked off, but a few students nearby kept glancing her way, whispering again. She could feel the eyes, the assumptions, the curiosity disguised as judgment. First period, English class. Mrs. Langford was cheerful, the kind of teacher who tried too hard to sound young. "Everyone, this is Alyssa Coleman. She just transferred here." "Let's make her feel welcome." A few kids mumbled, "Hey," without looking up. One of them, the same tall blonde girl from earlier, Brianna Lewis, tilted her head with a smirk. "Welcome to Crestview," she said, voice dripping with something that didn't sound like welcome at all. Alyssa simply nodded and took her seat in the second row. As the lesson went on, she barely spoke, but she listened to everything. Her focus was sharp. When Mrs. Langford called on her to read a passage, her voice was clear, confident, and slightly accented, a soft southern rhythm. The room went quiet for a second. That was the moment Brianna leaned toward her friend and whispered loud enough for people to hear, "Guess we got ourselves a little country girl." A few laughs followed. Alyssa paused, met Brianna's gaze, and said plainly, "You done?" That stopped the laughter, just for a second. Mrs. Langford cleared her throat, trying to keep control of the class, but Alyssa didn't look embarrassed. She looked steady, almost unbothered. After class, she gathered her things slowly, while most of the students rushed out. When she finally walked through the hallway again, a group of seniors brushed past her shoulder, one muttering, "Watch where you're going." She didn't respond. She'd learned that sometimes silence cuts deeper than any comeback, but silence also builds pressure, and soon that pressure would explode. But little did they know, the quiet girl they were mocking had a strength none of them were ready to see. By day 3, Alyssa already knew which hallways were safe to walk through and which ones weren't. Some places just had that energy. Too loud, too crowded, too many eyes. She preferred the art hallway. It was quieter there, smelled faintly of paint and pencil shavings, and most people didn't care who you were as long as you stayed out of their space. But even there, whispers followed her like shadows. Between classes, she caught snatches of conversation as she walked by. "Yeah, that's her. The new girl, she doesn't talk to anyone. Probably thinks she's better than us." She wanted to roll her eyes, but she didn't. That's what they wanted. A reaction. Instead, she adjusted her backpack strap and kept moving. During lunch that day, she sat alone at the end of a long table. The cafeteria smelled like tater tots and disinfectant. All around her, voices blended into a constant roar of laughter, gossip, and phone screens lighting up with new posts. Alyssa ate quietly. Peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, and a bottle of water. She didn't scroll through her phone like everyone else. She just watched. That's when Brianna showed up again. This time with her two closest friends, Jenna Price and Logan Carter. Brianna carried a tray stacked with fries, nuggets, and an oversized iced tea. She looked like she owned the place, the kind of girl whose name everyone knew before they even met her. Well, eating all by yourself? Brianna said, dropping her tray across from Alyssa. Alyssa didn't look up. I'm fine where I am. Oh, I don't doubt that, Brianna smirked. Just surprised you're not sitting with, your people. Logan chuckled under his breath. Jenna gave Brianna that "you're going too far" look, but didn't say anything. Alyssa set her sandwich down and met Brianna's eyes. What exactly do you mean by that? She asked evenly. Brianna shrugged, pretending innocence. Nothing. Just saying, you don't really fit in around here. Crestview's not really your kind of place. Before Alyssa could answer, Zach, the same boy who'd helped her on day one, walked by and stopped. Yo, Brianna, chill. You don't even know her. Brianna turned to him with a sarcastic smile. Relax, Zach. We're just talking. Doesn't sound like talking, he shot back. Alyssa stood up slowly. It's fine, she said. People show you who they are. You just gotta pay attention. She picked up her tray and walked away before Brianna could think of a comeback. That one sentence stuck with a few people at that table, especially Jenna, who looked down at her food, uncomfortable. Later that day in the locker room after gym, Brianna brought it up again. You see that look she gave me? She said, brushing her ponytail back. Like she's better than me or something. Logan grinned. Maybe she is. You're acting kinda obsessed. Brianna threw her towel at him. I'm not obsessed. I just don't like her attitude. The truth was, Alyssa's calmness bothered Brianna more than any insult could have. Most new kids tried to please her. Alyssa didn't. And that quiet confidence, that unbothered look, made Brianna feel small in a way she didn't understand. But jealousy has a way of turning curiosity into cruelty, and Brianna was just getting started. By the end of the week, Alyssa's name was everywhere. Not because she did anything wrong, but because Brianna made sure it stayed in people's mouths. She started small, little things that didn't look like bullying if you weren't paying attention. A whisper in the hallway, a smirk during roll call, a joke that wasn't really a joke. Alyssa could handle it. She'd moved around enough. Military family life didn't leave much room for being fragile. Her dad always said, you can't control what people do. You can only control your reaction. So that's what she did. Still, the tension was starting to build. One morning between second and third period, Alyssa was walking toward history class when she felt someone bump her shoulder, hard. Her books fell to the floor, paper scattering everywhere. Oops, Brianna said, feigning surprise. Didn't see you there. Alyssa looked up at her, unblinking. Yeah, I'm sure you didn't. A few students nearby froze, sensing something was about to happen. Brianna crossed her arms, tilting her head. You got a problem? No, Alyssa said calmly, kneeling to pick up her papers. But you might, if you keep testing me. That made Brianna laugh, a sharp, mocking sound that filled the hallway. Oh, please. What are you gonna do? Tell the principal? Alyssa gathered her books, stood up, and leaned just slightly closer. Her voice was low but clear. No, I don't need to. For the first time, Brianna blinked, just for a second, then scoffed and turned to walk away. But her friends were watching, and her pride wouldn't let it end there. So she glanced over her shoulder and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, Guess she's got a temper after all. Alyssa didn't bite. She walked past her, head held high like she didn't even exist. That stung Brianna worse than an insult. Later that day, in the locker room before PE, Brianna replayed the whole thing for her friends. You should have seen her face, she said, laughing. She thinks she's tough. Logan grinned. You're really obsessed, you know that. Jenna frowned. Bree, just let it go. She didn't even do anything exactly, Brianna snapped. That's the point. She thinks she's too good to react. But that night, while scrolling through her phone, Brianna saw something that pushed her over the edge. A few students had posted a short clip of the hallway moment on Snapchat with captions like, New girl doesn't play around, and Brianna got checked. Brianna's face burned. Her control over the school's social scene had never been challenged, not like this. The next day, her smile returned. But it wasn't real. It was the kind of smile that hides anger. When she saw Alyssa sitting near the back of the cafeteria again, calm as ever, she decided that if Alyssa wanted to act tough, she'd make her prove it. But the thing about picking a fight with someone you don't understand is that you might end up getting exactly what you asked for. Friday afternoon, the air felt heavier than usual. The cafeteria buzzed with the kind of restless energy that comes right before a long weekend. Laughter bounced off the walls, trays clattered, and phones glowed from every table. Alyssa sat alone again, quietly eating her chicken sandwich and writing something in a small notebook. Across the room, Brianna watched her like a hawk. She wasn't alone either. Logan and Jenna were there, along with a few others from the volleyball team. Every time Alyssa glanced up, Brianna looked away, pretending to be deep in conversation. But she wasn't pretending for long. "Watch this," Brianna whispered, standing up. She strutted across the cafeteria, tray in hand, that fake smile confidence plastered on her face. Her friends watched, half curious, half worried. Jenna muttered, "Bri, don't..." But it was too late. Brianna stopped right in front of Alyssa's table. "Hey, country girl," she said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "You've been real quiet lately. What's the matter? No one to talk to?" Alyssa didn't even look up from her notebook. "You done?" she asked, echoing her tone from that first day in English class. A few kids at surrounding tables perked up. They remembered that line. Brianna laughed. "Oh, she talks back now. That's cute. You think you're better than everyone here, don't you?" Alyssa closed her notebook and looked straight at her. "I think you need attention more than food." That line hit. The entire section of the cafeteria went, "Oh." Brianna's smile faltered, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. She leaned forward. "You know what? Maybe you should go back to whatever ghetto school you came from." The laughter stopped. Even Logan looked uncomfortable. Alyssa blinked once, her jaw tightening. Just slightly. Then she stood up, slow and steady. She was shorter than Brianna, but her presence filled the space between them like a wall. "Say that again," Alyssa said quietly. "Oh, so now you're tough." Brianna scoffed, stepping closer. "What are you gonna do?" Before she could finish, her knee shot forward. It was quick, mean, and careless. She kneed Alyssa right in the face. Gasps exploded across the cafeteria. Alyssa stumbled back, her tray crashing to the floor, apple slices scattering under the table. Her hand went up to her nose. A thin line of blood trickled down. "Brianna!" Jenna shouted, jumping up from her seat. "What the hell?" But Brianna just stood there, breathing hard, still trying to look in control. She asked for it. Then Alyssa lifted her head. The calm that had been there all week was gone, replaced by something colder. Not rage, not panic, just focus. She wiped the blood from her lip with the back of her hand and said quietly, "You shouldn't have done that." Brianna hesitated. "What?" Before she could move, Alyssa stepped forward, quick and controlled. She didn't throw a punch. She sidestepped, grabbed Brianna's wrist, twisted it down, and pushed her back just enough for Brianna to lose balance and hit the table edge behind her. The tray clattered to the floor. The whole cafeteria froze. Alyssa didn't hit her, didn't yell. She just stood there, breathing evenly. "You're not hurt," she said calmly, "but you will be if you touch me again." Two teachers rushed over, shouting, "What's going on here?" Brianna scrambled up, face red, shouting, "She attacked me." But everyone had seen what happened. Every phone camera had caught it too. Alyssa raised her hand slightly, still calm. "You might want to check the cameras before you believe that." The teachers separated them, voices loud and stern, but Alyssa didn't resist. She just stared at Brianna, not with hate, but disappointment. Zach came running over from the other side of the cafeteria. "Alyssa, you good?" She gave a faint nod, touching her cheek. "I'm fine." But inside, she wasn't fine, not because of the hit, but because she knew what would come next. Rumors, stories, people twisting what they saw. As she walked out of the cafeteria with the teachers, the entire room buzzed with energy. Phones were already out. Someone whispered, "Yo, she flipped her." Another said, "She's dangerous." But the truth was, Alyssa hadn't even started to defend herself. Not really. The principal's office smelled like coffee and old carpet. Alyssa sat in the chair closest to the window, a folded tissue pressed against her nose. She could feel her heartbeat slowing, the adrenaline fading. Across from her, the vice principal, Mr. Hampton, was pacing back and forth, phone in hand. "I just got a dozen calls from parents," he muttered. "Videos are already online." Alyssa didn't say anything. She stared out the window, watching the trees sway gently outside. Mr. Hampton turned toward her. "Alyssa, I need your side of the story." She looked up at him, steady and composed. "I didn't start it. She hit me first." "I saw the footage," he admitted, rubbing his temples. "You didn't throw a punch, but you did put your hands on her." "I defended myself," Alyssa replied. "There's a difference." He sighed, clearly torn. "You understand I still have to call your guardian?" "My dad," she said simply. "He'll answer." Mr. Hampton nodded, dialing the number from her file. Alyssa could hear the muffled ringtone, and then a deep voice answered. "Major Coleman speaking." The tone in Mr. Hampton's voice shifted instantly. "Sir, this is Vice Principal Hampton from Crestview High. I'm calling regarding your daughter, Alyssa. There was an incident during lunch today." A pause, then, "Is she all right?" "She's fine, sir. But there was a fight. We're still sorting out who—" "You'll have my full attention in 20 minutes, Major Coleman interrupted, his tone controlled but unmistakably firm. "Please don't speak to her further until I arrive." Click. Call ended. Mr. Hampton exhaled and put the phone down. "He'll be here soon." Alyssa didn't respond. She knew what that meant. Her father didn't play around when it came to her safety or her discipline. Outside the office, she could hear faint voices from the hallway, students lingering by the door, whispering about what happened. "Did you see how fast she moved? Bro, she didn't even hit her. She flipped her arm or something." "I think she's in some kind of combat class." Alyssa closed her eyes for a second, trying to block it all out. Meanwhile, Brianna was sitting in a separate room, crying. Though whether from pain or embarrassment, no one could tell. Jenna had tried to comfort her, but Brianna kept saying, "She humiliated me." Everyone saw. The truth was, the cafeteria was split. Half the students thought Alyssa was a villain, the other half thought she was a hero. When the office door finally opened, silence fell. Major Terrence Coleman walked in wearing his military jacket, posture straight as a board. His presence filled the room before he even spoke. His deep brown eyes scanned the scene, first Mr. Hampton, then Alyssa. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Alyssa nodded. "Yeah." He turned to the vice principal. "Show me the footage." Mr. Hampton pulled it up on his monitor, nervous. They watched in silence. When it ended, Major Coleman spoke first. "She was attacked. She defended herself without escalating. I taught her that." Mr. Hampton nodded, uneasy. "Sir, I agree. Still, the school policy requires a suspension for physical contact." "How long?" the major asked. 3 days. Major Coleman exhaled slowly, then looked back at Alyssa. "You'll serve it. We don't run from rules, even when they're unfair. But you did nothing wrong." Alyssa nodded again. "Yes, sir." Mr. Hampton tried to find words, but none came. The calm between father and daughter felt heavy. Not angry, just controlled. As they left the office, the hallway was packed with curious faces. Whispers stopped. The second Major Coleman looked at them. Alyssa followed him out, silent. Once they reached the parking lot, he finally spoke. "You handled yourself with control. I'm proud of that." "Doesn't feel like something to be proud of," she said softly. "Self-control always is," he replied, "especially when the world expects you to lose it." Alyssa looked down, processing his words. The wind carried the faint sound of a school bell ringing in the distance. But back inside those halls, her story was already spreading faster than she could imagine, and not everyone planned to keep it fair. By Saturday morning, Alyssa's name wasn't just in the hallways anymore. It was on every phone screen in town. Someone had uploaded the cafeteria video to TikTok with the caption, "New girl at Crestview just embarrassed the queen bee." By noon, it had nearly 20,000 views. People commented things like, "She didn't even hit her, just blocked it like she's trained or something." Bro, that girl's composure is unreal. Why did Brianna attack her in the first place? But there were other comments too. Cruel ones. She probably deserved it. Bet she started it. Always playing the victim. Alyssa scrolled through some of them that night before deleting the app altogether. She didn't want to see strangers debating her life like it was a reality show. She'd seen her dad deal with judgment before, people who didn't know him, didn't understand his discipline, his structure. He'd always told her, the truth doesn't need defending. It reveals itself when the noise dies down, but right now, the noise was deafening. At school on Monday, the atmosphere had shifted completely. When Alyssa walked down the hallway, people didn't whisper like before. They just moved out of her way, some out of respect, some out of fear. Zach caught up to her by her locker. "Hey, you holding up?" "I'm fine," she said quietly, turning her combination lock. "You sure?" "I saw the posts. People are wild. I can't control them," she replied. "They'll talk until they're tired." He smiled faintly. "You know, most people would be bragging after something like that." "Most people don't want peace," she said, shutting her locker. At the same time, Brianna hadn't been back to school since Friday. Rumor was her parents were furious, not just about the fight, but about the video. Her mom had even called the school board demanding the clip be taken down. But once something hits the internet, it's out of anyone's control. In the teacher's lounge, they were talking about it too. Some said Alyssa should have walked away. Others said the school handled it wrong. The principal called an assembly to address school culture, but everyone knew who it was really about. During that assembly, students sat in rows, whispering until the lights dimmed. The principal spoke about kindness and respect, but most weren't listening. They were watching Alyssa, her face calm, eyes forward, hands folded in her lap. Afterward, a few kids she barely knew came up to her. "Hey, that video? You were right to defend yourself. Don't let them mess with you again." I wish I could stay that calm. She didn't know how to respond to any of it. Compliments felt strange when they came from people who hadn't even said hello before. By the end of the day, she found Jenna, Brianna's quieter friend, waiting by her locker. "Hey," Jenna said softly. Alyssa turned. "Hey, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything." I should have stopped her before it got that far. Alyssa studied her for a moment. "You didn't hit me." "I still stood there," Jenna said, eyes down. "That's almost the same." There was a pause. Alyssa's voice softened. "Sometimes people stay quiet because they're scared. Just don't stay quiet next time." Jenna nodded, visibly relieved. "I won't." When Jenna walked away, Alyssa leaned against her locker, exhaling slowly. For the first time in days, she felt a small flicker of peace, but peace didn't last long, because just as she stepped outside that afternoon, she saw a black SUV pull into the parking lot. Her father stepped out, but he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a woman in a sharp gray suit carrying a folder. Zach, standing nearby, whispered, "Who's that?" Alyssa didn't answer. She already knew. That wasn't just any visitor. That was someone from the District Board of Education. But what they came to say would change how everyone saw Alyssa and Brianna forever. The next morning, Crestview High felt different. Teachers were on edge, the hall monitors looked busier than usual, and whispers about the meeting had already started spreading before first period. Alyssa arrived quietly, head down, backpack slung over one shoulder. She wasn't nervous, but she knew the day would be long. Mr. Hampton had called her father the night before, asking them both to come in early to discuss the next steps. When she walked into the main office, her father was already there, standing tall beside the woman from the day before, the one in the gray suit. She introduced herself with a firm handshake. "I'm Dr. Marlene Ortiz from the district," she said warmly. "Alyssa, I wanted to meet you personally." Alyssa nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Dr. Ortiz smiled faintly, then turned to Mr. Hampton and Principal Reeves. "I've reviewed the footage. I've read both students' statements. What I see is one girl provoking, assaulting, and another exercising restraint." Principal Reeves shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. "Yes, ma'am. But you understand, district policy doesn't differentiate between self-defense and physical retaliation." Dr. Ortiz crossed her arms. "Maybe that's part of the problem." Major Coleman's deep voice broke the silence. "My daughter didn't come here looking for trouble, but she won't run from it when someone brings it to her. That's not aggression. That's survival." Alyssa sat quietly listening. She wasn't used to her father speaking like this outside of home. He wasn't angry, but his words carried weight. Dr. Ortiz nodded. "I agree. And I think Crestview needs to think seriously about how it supports students who look different, sound different, or come from somewhere else." Mr. Hampton cleared his throat. "To be fair, ma'am, Most of the students here don't mean harm. It's just intent doesn't erase impact, Dr. Ortiz interrupted softly. Let's not excuse cruelty because it was popular. Alyssa glanced at her father, who gave her a reassuring nod. After a long pause, Dr. Ortiz turned to the principal. I recommend Alyssa's suspension be cleared from her record. She acted responsibly, and I'll be scheduling a district-led assembly on peer accountability and diversity. Principal Reeves hesitated but nodded. Understood. The meeting wrapped up quietly. As they stood to leave, Dr. Ortiz looked at Alyssa and said, You showed grace in a situation that could have gone much worse. That's rare. Don't lose that outside. In the hallway, students were pretending not to stare. When Alyssa and her father walked past, voices lowered, eyes followed. She heard one kid whisper, That's her dad. The military guy. Another said, Guess she really is trained. Her father caught one of those whispers and stopped. He turned toward the group of students watching and said calmly, Being trained isn't about fighting. It's about control. Remember that. The hallway went quiet. They stepped outside into the cool afternoon air. Alyssa exhaled slowly, the first time she'd felt her shoulders relax in days. You didn't have to defend me like that, she said. Yes, I did, her father replied. But you defended yourself first. That's what matters. Alyssa looked down, kicking a small pebble on the sidewalk. It still feels unfair. It is, he said, but fairness isn't promised. What matters is what you do next. She thought about that. All the eyes, the whispers, the comments. She couldn't control any of it. But maybe, just maybe, she could change how people saw her story. That afternoon, as her father drove her home, Alyssa stared out the window and saw Brianna walking on the sidewalk with her mom. Their eyes met for half a second, and Alyssa could tell. The girl who had once smirked at her now looked small. Not angry, just lost. But sometimes, facing your mistake hurts more than any fight, and Brianna was about to find that out herself. The following week felt strange. Not quiet, not chaotic, just different. The same hallways that once felt heavy with judgment now felt lighter. People greeted Alyssa more, even if awkwardly. Some smiled, some nodded, some still looked away. She didn't need their approval, but she noticed the shift. She was back in English class, the same one where Brianna had mocked her voice on her first day. Mrs. Langford was talking about character development in stories, how people change when they face consequences. Alyssa almost smiled at that. The timing was too perfect. When the bell rang, most students rushed out, but Brianna stayed behind, fidgeting with her backpack strap. Her once perfect posture looked smaller now. She waited until the room was empty before walking over. Alyssa, she said quietly. Alyssa didn't turn right away. Yeah? I wanted to say I'm sorry. The words were stiff but real. I shouldn't have done what I did. Any of it, Alyssa finally looked at her. Why now? Brianna hesitated. Because after everything, the video, my parents, the school, I realized I've been acting like I own people, and I don't even know why. I guess I felt threatened by someone who didn't need to try so hard. For the first time, Alyssa saw the girl behind the attitude, the pressure, the insecurity, the fear of losing control. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it made sense. Alyssa nodded slowly. It's not about me, Brianna. It's about you figuring out who you really are, without needing to make someone else smaller. Brianna's voice cracked. You could have hurt me. You didn't. You had every reason to, and you didn't. I told you I didn't need to, Alyssa said softly. My dad taught me something a long time ago. Power isn't what you use to hurt people. It's what you control when you could. Brianna's eyes watered, and she gave a small nod. I get it now. Alyssa didn't smile, but her tone softened. Good. Just do better. Brianna turned to leave, but before she walked out, she paused. You're stronger than anyone here thinks. I know, Alyssa replied. That afternoon, Alyssa walked outside alone. The Kansas sky stretched wide and blue above her, the kind of sky that makes you feel small but steady. She breathed in the crisp air and felt something she hadn't felt since arriving at Crestview. Peace. Not the quiet kind that hides pain, but the kind that grows after standing your ground. As she walked toward the bus, Zach caught up with her. So, you really just forgave her? I didn't say I forgave her, Alyssa said. I just don't carry what isn't mine. He smiled. You're different, you know that? I've been told. The bus doors opened with a hiss. Before stepping in, she glanced back at the school. The brick walls, the glass doors, the faces pressed against windows watching her go. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. The story they'd told about her had changed, not because she shouted, but because she stood her ground with dignity. When she got home, her father was in the driveway, cleaning the truck. He looked up. How was school? Better, she said simply. He smiled faintly. Told you the truth always shows up. Just takes its time. Alyssa nodded. You were right. They didn't need to say anything more. The air was calm, the sun low, and for the first time in a while, the world around her felt balanced. Because sometimes, strength isn't loud. It's the quiet in you that refuses to break when others try to push you down. And that's the real story of Alyssa Coleman. The girl they thought they could humiliate, the one they tried to make small, only to learn that real power isn't in your fists. It's in your restraint, your composure, and your refusal to become what hurt you. If you made it this far, remember this. Before you judge someone, ask yourself what it costs them to stay calm when you wouldn't. Respect the ones who don't fight to be seen, because sometimes they're the strongest ones in the room. Like, share, and subscribe if this story made you think twice about what strength really means. Someone out there might need to hear it today.